evening. Thank you. Welcome, everybody. Appreciate you coming out today. We are here tonight to talk about updating the water control manual at Baldhill Dam and Lake Ashtabula. So thank you for joining us. Just to let you know right at the top as we get started, we are recording this presentation and streaming it live on YouTube. It will be housed as a video on YouTube, so if you have a friend or colleague who was interested in what we talked about tonight and they weren't able to be here, you will be able to find the recording on YouTube, and just so that you're aware that we are live streaming. And we're here tonight to share a little bit about the process and the timeline for the Corps of Engineers' effort to update the Baldhill Dam Water Control Manual. And we are at the beginning of this water control manual update process, so we're really here to listen to ideas from the public and ideas and suggestions for what to be considered during this process. My name is Sierra Keenan, and I'll be facilitating the conversation. I'm joined by several subject matter experts from the Corps who will be presenting tonight as well. The format for tonight will be about a 15-minute presentation, and especially with this small crowd, we can keep it informal as far as public input. There will be plenty of time for all comments and questions, and once we've gone through the comments and questions that you all have, we'll adjourn to an open house style, similar to how we started with the staff dispersed around the room, where we have a couple of maps and posters with information about the area and the process for updating the water control manual. So to help us run smoothly through our meeting tonight, we do have a couple of ground rules to set the stage. So during the presentation, we ask that you keep your questions until the end. During the public input time, keep your remarks brief enough so everyone will have time. I am sure we'll all have time tonight, but just to be mindful of those around us. And if you have multiple questions, we can certainly take those. And if you have specific questions and you want to get into a dialogue one-on-one, we can do that during the open house. We'll have several of our staff here. And we invite your feedback during this verbal input time as well as in writing. So we have a sign-in sheet at the table where you all came in, as well as comment cards where you can fill out a comment in writing and leave that with us tonight, mail that to us later, take a picture of it, send it by email, or the email address is here as well if you want to think about your comments and send them by email. We'll be asking for your input to this process through November 10th. So we have several weeks that we'll be soliciting input and comments. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Michael Swenson, our hydrologic engineer, and he'll walk us through some of the operations of the site.
Okay. Just some really basic information about the dam and how we operate it, kind of at a high level, and we can get into more details, as we discuss this later. The authorized purpose, the primary authorized purpose, are for flood control and water supply, but it's a multi-purpose dam. So the secondary purposes are recreation, fish and wildlife, and water quality. And I think everybody here knows where Baldhill Dam is and Lake Ashtabula, reservoir behind it, but just a map of where we are relative to Fargo and Valley City. So the water control manual dictates how the Corps manages a project, and that's why we get public input. That's why we are careful to consider all the various trade-offs when we make decisions about what goes in the water control manual. And so Corps staff have to follow that unless it's an emergency or unless some other extreme situation happens and we get higher level approval to modify or make a deviation from what's in the manual. Just some basic levels. We generally keep the pool at 1266 feet elevation. During big floods, that can rise up to 1271, so 5 feet higher. And then at a typical winter, it'll go down 3.5 feet to 1262.5. We do that currently every winter. And during a very snowy winter, if the dissolved oxygen is sufficient in the lake, we can go down 11 feet below that 1266 to 1255 feet. And then currently the minimum flow is 13 CFS. And again, just really basic, high-level operation. In the summer, we maintain that steady pool, generally from the end of the spring snow melts until the beginning of October. And then starting in October, we start to draw down the pool slowly over October through the winter. And then as we get into the later winter and realize how much snow we have out in the basin, depends on how far we take the pool down. And then in the spring, it's managed to absorb that flood water as best as possible and manage that flood water as best as possible and raise back up to the summer level. So there's been a few changes to the basin, and I'm going to mention these even though they're not really operated by us as an agency. One is the Devil's Lake outlet. So starting in 2005 and then increased in 2012, the total capacity out of the Devil's Lake Basin is about 600 CFS. And so this typically has increased the summer flows and the fall, winter flows into the Cheyenne River upstream of Baldhill Dam. And so there's been much higher flows on average through August, September in the Cheyenne River and then downstream of the dam as well. And then the other thing I wanted to mention is the Red River Valley Water Supply Project, which I think a lot of people in the audience know a lot more about this than me, certainly, but this is, again, a non-federal project. So one we're not directly involved with, but with a plan of transferring water from the Missouri River Basin into the Cheyenne River Basin upstream of the dam. And this is one of the reasons we're looking at the water control manual right now, just to see if there are changes we can make that would benefit this project, but also to look at the full set of authorized purposes for the dam and get public input for all purposes as we consider any changes we make. And then just a diagram showing that it has been a lot wetter in recent years, from 1949 to 1992. The average flow out of the dam was 85,000 acre feet. And then from 93 to 2008, that average flow jumped up to about 3 times that much. And then, since 2009, the average flow through the dam has been much higher. And some of that's been from the Devil's Lake outflow. And so the last water control manual was updated in 2013, kind of right in the middle of that really, this recent wet period that we've had. So that's all I have to say on dam operations for now, but we can get into more detail obviously later. And then Amanda was going to talk a little bit about some of the environmental aspects.
So I'm Amanda Goldstein, I'm the biologist on the project. So it's going to provide some organic big broad kind of overview of existing environmental conditions for Lake Ashtabula and the surrounding area. So as many of you know, Lake Ashtabula is a really productive sport fishery. There's good populations of walleye, northern pike, smallmouth bass, yellow perch. Those populations are managed by North Dakota Game and Fish. And this is something we just want to make sure that we're coordinating with them on that management. There's also Lake Ashtabula provided some important waterfowl habitat. There's been 11 species of waterfowl that have been documented on Lake Ashtabula, with 7 of those nesting. And then we're also, North Dakota lies in the overlap between Mississippi and the Central Flyway. So there's a big stopover point for migratory bird species, and that's something that we really want to pay attention to. So vegetation, we've seen kind of an increase in the land surrounding the lake. We've seen an increase of forest and shrub habitat. There's also been a bit of a decrease in just overall grassland diversity, which is kind of consistent with the other grassland in the state. We're seeing more smooth grove and Kentucky bluegrass dominating these grasslands. And we see a minor increase in bark vegetation. A lot of that has to do with water clarity due to zebra mussels. And there's 114 acres of wetland in the area within and surrounding the lake. So some of the impairments. So there's some water quality issues. There's a lot of high nutrient levels from agricultural runoffs, that can cause algae blooms. There's a little bit of erosion issues, mostly caused from wave action. A lot of that's due to wind. Solid oxygen levels we've seen a decrease in dissolved oxygen in the winter, but we haven't seen any really resulting fish kills, so that's something that we really try to track. And there's been some minor changes in sedimentation in the lake. These are some of our endangered species that are found in the area, although none of them are really going to be impacted by changes in the water control manual. So the only two listed species are the northern long-eared bat, Dakota skipper, the monarch butterfly bee candidate species, but it has not been a final determination as far as listing has not been determined yet. And then these are some of the bird species, like I mentioned, were a really important habitat or location for the Central Flyway and Pacific Flyway. U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service has identified migratory bird species of concern. These don't have the same legal requirements for protection that endangered species have, but it's something that we want to pay attention to. So these are the 17 species that are kind of found within Lake Ashtabula and surrounding area that we're going to pay attention to.
Okay, thanks for that background, and we can get into questions here shortly. I'm just going to talk a little bit more about the overall process for this update to the water control manual so that you all will know what to expect after today. So we are at the very start of this process, just initiating, reaching out, collecting public comments and feedback on areas to consider during the water control manual update. So that's starting now. We'll ask for comments to be submitted by November 10th. Then we'll move into a phase of modeling and preparing performance indicators. So looking to understand what would be the effects on habitat or wildlife or water levels with different changes to the water control manual. And we'll study alternatives based on feedback for these areas of change. That will occur over winter and into spring, and once we have some findings on those performance indicators, modeling of those different alternatives, then we'll be back out here in late spring, early summer with another round of public meetings to present those findings and again ask for comment and feedback on those alternative operating plans. Then with that feedback, we'll go back and perform a final round of study to look at those alternatives, compare and contrast how those alternatives are performing, and incorporate feedback that we've received based on that first round of results. And then part two, which would occur winter 2024 into early 2025, depending on funding. We're funded through the end of part one, which would take us to the end of September 2024. Part two would then be a final set of public meetings to present the recommended plan and the recommended changes, and to submit the changes for the water control manual for approval. So that's the timeline. There's a lot of work ahead of us, but like I said, we are at the very beginning of that process, and that's why we're here now to ask for your ideas, comments, and solicit feedback. So how do you share input? You can share comments verbally tonight. Written comments can be shared tonight, left on the hard copy sheets, and electronically to the email shown here. We also have posters with the QR code, and that'll bring you to the website where you can learn more about the water control manual update, and also a link to the email on that website to submit your comments. So if you want to pull up that QR code on your way out, you can make a note to send an email or comments to us later. And an updated water control manual could address some of these themes. So when you're thinking about comments that will really help guide the performance indicators and the alternatives that we look at, we can look at things that might affect lake sedimentation, changes to the pool operation, either higher or lower, changes to outflow from the dam, modifications that could result in environmental benefits to fish or wildlife, and really other ideas. You all are users of the area and may have thoughts on what we should consider, so that's what we're here to learn about. If you want to learn more, there are a couple of websites, and you can also find the current water control manual on the national website, the water.usace.army.mil website. We do have a couple copies of this printed. I realize that especially as the sun is coming in through those windows, it's getting a little hard to see here. So we can send some hard copies if you want. And then again, that QR code will bring you to that Lake Ashtabula Baldhill Dam site. So we'll move now into public input. We'll end our streaming on YouTube. I do have a handheld mic, so if we need that to hear each other, I can pull that out, but I think with the size of the crowd, we may not need it. So we'll just open it up for comments, questions. We've got a team here that can answer those questions, and there will be some time for additional one-on-one dialogue. So I'll move a little bit out of the sun so I can see if you have a question instead of being blinded, and we'll turn it over to you all to hear.